Hello, welcome to Tea with Mali. Today we have Jack Gates with us. He is the COO of Sales Lab, and he's also the founder of the Maryland Leadership Breakfast. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. I want to know what open source leadership is.
Great start. So in software, when you get a whole bunch of people together and they all use their talents to create software, they also go back in, and when there's a bug or a fix that's needed or an improvement, they tinker with it. And so it's a crowd doing this, excuse me, as opposed to one person or one company. Open source leadership is a participatory type of leadership where it's not somebody sitting at the top of a heap saying this is the way it needs to be done. It's getting information from the doers, the people that actually do the work, as well as folks that have experience and are able to kind of put things together. So it's a collaborative effort.
Very cool.
So open source is the opposite of closed.
So where did you come up with that concept? Did you learn it? Did you hear it? Did you make it up?
Oh, I made it up. But it's so descriptive of being part of a group of people as opposed to being defined by an organization or a school or other entity.
So what inspired you to go ahead and found the Maryland Leadership Breakfast?
When I sat in the big chair, when I was the president and CEO of National Captioning Institute, I could buy people to come and listen to me. So I could get accountants and lawyers and consultants, and they would be cheerful about sitting there listening to what I had to say or asking questions or whatever I was doing. But it was difficult to find a forum where I could sit with peers and just talk. And as I went and talked to others, I found that they were having the same difficulty in finding some place that was just sharing ideas. The concept of the Maryland Leadership Breakfast is experienced individuals in leadership roles and to continue to learn. It's peer-to-peer learning. And it's an opportunity. We all have stories.
Don't we?
Oh, yes. And others can benefit from those stories, whether they're good or bad. So this is an opportunity to share those stories. And I knew from my own personal experience, as well as others that were leaders of organizations and groups, that they had stories too. And if you got them talking, it was hard to get them to stop. So there was a need, there was a desire to share. And that's really what it's about.
So you started that organization in 2008, correct?
2008, in the middle of a black ice storm.
Oh, jeez. And they showed up.
Half of them did.
Yeah, there's definite need for that. And I asked that question because it was a perfect tie into the first question of this interview, which is open source leadership. It really is about that collaboration piece. How important is that? Like, where did you learn that? Did you have a boss at some point that taught you that was a role model for that? Or maybe not just that, but just lessons in leadership in general?
The most influential boss that I ever had was a guy named Paul Jackson, and he was an actuary. In the insurance industry now, we use something called a unisex table. Before that, they had gender-based tables, so men live 3 years less than women. The unisex table blended both of those together. So this is how they determine what longevity is. And that's important for things like insurance and pensions and other things. Well, Paul was the one that conceived that and actually developed it. He was my boss. I got 5 minutes a week with him. 5 minutes, 5. That's all I got. I learned more from him than I have from anybody that I can remember. He taught me through those 5 minutes to be very, very good with presentation, to be very effective, to be concise, to be thoughtful, but thoughtful from the standpoint of what I was presenting. It wasn't just surface. It was also having anticipated what some of the questions might be. If I came with a problem, it was also to bring solutions. And I would come in with a stack of stuff to talk with him about. I would leave with a bigger stack of things that I needed to do. But it was wonderful. And from just interacting with him on a weekly basis, my 300 seconds, I learned a great deal about an effective way, a model for how you should really do, I guess it's leadership, how you should approach something. And it's not at the surface. It's a mastery type of thing. And it takes 10,000 hours to do. So 10,000 hours for a 5-minute presentation. Sounds like a good return to me.
So those are the takeaways from those 5 minutes a week that you had.
Absolutely. Use them today. That's part of open source. That's what I use with the leadership breakfast. That's what I use professionally.
Great. Can you give us an example or a situation for business owners out there, some lessons that they can take away? You know, examples of your successes, examples of challenges and pitfalls?
Well, one of the most enjoyable and perhaps successful or most successful projects that I ever did was I was the general manager of a country club. They were looking to they were changing the general manager, and so I stepped in for 3.5 months while they were searching, and I had several goals. One was to make the club a destination. You know, country clubs are for fun, and you come there and you play golf or you play tennis and you eat and do all that kind of stuff. But it was to make it a destination for people, to change the atmosphere, to be one of fun. And top of the list for, okay, tonight, where are we going to go? The other was to increase revenue, and I did that through the food and beverage service. Okay. So what was fun about it was that I had 700 members, which means that I had about probably 2,800 bosses, when you count spouses and kids and dogs and cats. And it was just absolutely wonderful. So what I did to change the atmosphere, what I did to increase the revenue, and by the way, I doubled the revenue in the 3 months.
I was going to say just in over 3 months.
Just in 3 months. And I did it by asking people, how are we doing? The old Mayor Koch routine. I'd come up to them while they were eating, and I'd ask them, how's the service? How's the food? What can we do differently? How can we serve you better? At the end of the meal, I would come with the reservation book and visit and say, you know, are you going to be in next week? Why don't we just go ahead and make your reservation now, in case the room fills up. And one of the fun things, one of my friends, who was a member of the club, is a coffee connoisseur. And he pulled me aside and he says, Jack, I don't know what you're going to do, but this coffee is horrible. And I said, really? And he says, oh yeah, it's just absolutely, it's mud, it's miserable. And I said, okay, so give me 2 days and then I want you and your wife to come back and let's have a taste test. So he says, okay, you're on. So I went back in the kitchen and I found that I asked, okay, how often do we clean the coffee pot? And they looked at me kind of strange and they said, huh? Clean the coffee pot? I said, yeah, how often do we do that? And I guess the answer is probably never. So we cleaned the pot that night after everybody was gone. And I invited him to come back the next day. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you 3 cups of coffee. You can taste them. Tell me which one's the best. Okay. So I gave him 3 identical cups of coffee from the same machine, the same coffee blend, and he was in heaven. The first one he tasted, it was delightful. It was delicious. The next one, he had different adjectives that described it. The last one, he says, this is the one. And it was just a matter of listening to what he had to say and then figuring out, okay, how do we address that?
Wow. How often does that happen in leadership? I mean, you have worked with so many leaders, you've been a leader yourself, when we forget the small little things. just asking someone how's their day, or asking someone how's it going, do you like this?
You know, in human resources, they survey everything, and they take statistics and they do all kinds of stuff. What they found was that the dollars that you make, they're important. They're not at the top of the list. They're in the top 10, but down pretty far. The most important thing is really the atmosphere and feeling appreciated. And how can you feel appreciated if nobody asks you about anything? They don't acknowledge you. I mean, there's bosses, there's coworkers, that you come in and it's, there isn't any kind of a warm welcome or anything. So from a leader's standpoint, you got leaders that are very compassionate and very, just very empathetic. And you've got leaders like General Patton, who in his own way was compassionate. He was trying to save people's lives and demands that they give him the best. But in both cases, they're inquiring, they're creating a relationship, they're nurturing that relationship, and it doesn't take a whole lot. The book 1 Minute Manager was all about walking around and spending a minute with each person over time. I don't know that that's a good example of great management or leadership, but the concept is there.
To give people attention.
Absolutely.
You have worked inside organizations, you've actually built organizations, you've disorganized organizations, you've worked in mergers and acquisitions of organizations, many different phases inside a corporation. How do you take your skills and help the leaders that you work with now? Because all the leaders you work with are in different phases of their business. Being able to relate to your own personal experience, what difference does that make to someone? I mean, not just coaching what you've read, but actually have lived it, and then being able to look at someone and say, okay, I've been there. What's that feeling like?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. Long time ago, when I was just a wee lad, I took a Dale Carnegie course about public speaking. And one of the exercises was to do a presentation to the class about some physical activity. So I got up in front of the class and I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I decided that I would tell them, I would show them, I would have them experience cutting down a tree with a chainsaw.
Okay.
So I got up there and I did the sound effects and everything. The first row was a little wet when I was finished with it. But I got the chainsaw started, and then I would holler at them when... And so I told them about cutting a notch. And there was a group of people here, and there was a center aisle. And so just as the tree was about to fall, I warned them, get back, and had the tree drop right, and they were... So it was about sharing an experience and doing it with a different medium. And that's part of what I'm bringing to the table, and I'm sharing. That experience shows me that there's a great deal that is nonverbal that we learn, and sometimes we don't have a chance to express it. The things that I think that are really important, and what I share probably more times than people really want to hear, there's about a half a dozen things. If you're promoting yourself or an organization or a product or a service or just want to meet people, there's a rule of 20, 2, and 1. 20 face-to-face meetings every month. Now you can relate to that because back in a former lifetime,
yes,
when you had a goal of 1,000 meetings in a year,
yes,
that's basically what you were doing.
Yes, 1,000 Extraordinary People project. That was my project.
It was a wonderful project, and you exceeded the goal.
By a few, at the nick of time, but thank you. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I want to get back to that because when I was in financial services, they did train us. Thank goodness, because I still hold true to that training today, is 555 was our number. 5 what we called new scenes,
right,
5 existing clients, and 5 centers of influence. And that was a way for us to continue to be present to the different people in our lives that could support us and that we could support.
See, that's way too complicated for me. The 20 is face-to-face meetings. And you learn so much from doing that. The 2 is 2 blog posts or some public writing once a week. 2 blogs per week. And the 1 is being involved with an organization where you're an owner. Maybe you're not the founder of it. For example, there was a technical user group for Google. It was called GTUG. And I was the one that people saw when they came in. I did the name tags. I checked off the people as they were coming in. I knew everybody. And so I was very prominent in that group and attended all the meetings and learned a lot about technical stuff that I have no idea what they were talking about. But it's the 22 and 1. That's the first thing. The second thing is to never stop learning. Stay curious. Be curious. And a collateral thing to that is read. Read a lot of things. Read stuff for your own interest, for recreation. But read differing views. So in the political world, which we don't talk about, there's definite people that are on one side of an issue and on another side of an issue, and some people that are, who knows what they are. Read them all. And don't just stop with the reading, but analyze it. And the analyzation of it is, what's the best thing I learned? Whether I agree with them or whether I don't agree with them, what's the best thing I learned? That flows into the next one. Write it down. Our memory is as powerful as it is, or as we think it is. Writing it down solidifies it also as a way of thinking. And my suggestion is to develop a letterhead type of thing. And after you've transcribed your notes, transcribe them over to that piece of paper and put it on letterhead. What I've found is those notes actually have a purpose later, not just to remind me, but to share. If there's something that we're talking about that I've got some background on, I've got a piece of paper. It's already got my logo. It's already got my contact information. Molly, here's something that you may enjoy reading. Another thing is to share your experience. You gain experience. You like to talk about it. Most of us do. So share it with people. Share knowledge and experience. And there's another one in there someplace, which is do the work. We learn through experience. We learn through doing projects. We learn less if we're just reading a book and if it's theoretical. First time I had a computer, this was back with the Paul Jackson days, I got a computer, I got Lotus 123, a spreadsheet program, and I got an assignment on my desk at 8 o'clock in the morning. It had to be to the client the next morning.
Wow.
So I loaded up the software. It only took me 4 times to do that. And then I filled in I did the analysis in there. And so I was all set to print. Looked at the clock, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is great. I'm almost done. I've mastered this thing. So I tried to print. And it would print about this much. And then there was a gap of white space about like this, and then print the rest of the report. And I couldn't figure out why. So naturally, I did the same thing over again, exact same steps, exact same result. So I said some magical words that I learned from a Navy guy, and that didn't seem to help either. So I reverted back to a lesson that I had learned several years earlier when I was eating the paste in the kindergarten class. I took the thing, I cut out the blank space, I put it together, I took it to the copy machine, I made a copy, I folded it, put it in the envelope, and took it to Federal Express, and I barely made it before they closed.
Ingenious.
Well, I found out that there was a command that if you did the command, I still don't know what it does, but if you did the command, what would happen is it would close that space.
Oh, geez.
So it's
But you got it done.
It's just that experience.
So can we repeat that again? I really love those tips. 22 and 1.
22 and 1.
20 face-to-face.
And 2 public writings, blogs or whatever. Mm-hmm. And 1 event each month.
Okay.
That you're a main player in.
Okay, great.
And then do the work.
Do the work.
Do projects, do anything, but actually roll up your sleeves, get dirty, actually do the work.
Right. Read, share your experience.
Yep.
Analyze and look at different perspectives, not just yours. What else am I missing? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Keep learning.
And keep learning.
Keep learning,
Those are
stay
great
curious.
lessons. Those
You
are
did
great
very
lessons.
well.
I'm trying here. I think I got them. Well, those are great lessons, but sometimes people say, gosh, these leadership models, and people come in and coach me and they say the same thing and they say the same thing, but for me it's like you just need reminders every once in a while. We know these things conceptually, but we don't necessarily always act on them. Because we have our own goals and we have all these pressures to get it done this way and that way on a deadline. And we forget these little things that actually make the biggest difference, to solidify our relationships, to make an environment, the culture of organization better, just because we decided before we walked in that we're going to smile at everybody. Just that little thing, that's a big deal, more than we realize, the connectivity, the emotional piece of what we do as leaders. And this is a great kind of segue into you as a person and a brand. I mean, through the years that I've known you, one word comes to mind when most people talk about you. I mean, you're a teddy bear. It's because it's heart. It's heart, and it's nurturing, and there's this desire to be a part of the community. When you talked about being seen and showing up, you actually not just want to be present for a brand purpose, but you actually care about leadership and you care about developing people. How do you think that comes naturally, like in your case, or is that something that most people have to learn?
I've been trying for the past 40 years to convince people that I'm shy. So far, I've been totally unsuccessful. Formula for this is really simple. If I come to a place and I don't participate, I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting a seat, because I'm not getting anything out of it. The opportunity to participate, to get to know somebody, to have some influence on somebody, even if it's just a smile, even if it's just standing up and letting people get past you in a row of a theater seat type of thing. I don't know if it's natural or not. It's what I do, it's what I am, and apparently it's what's noticed. Teddy bear.
Well, I guess it's innate within you then to be courteous and to be kind. Let's move into Sales Lab. What's your role? What does a COO do? In a very grand scheme of things, what's the role of the COO? Because we've interviewed a lot of CEOs on the show,
Right.
And I want to learn what's the difference. Some people don't know. What's the difference between a CEO and a COO, and then how does that impact your work at Sales Lab?
Being somewhat irreverent, the CEO has got this grand vision of here's the way it's going to be, and then turns around and gives it to the COO and says, you do it. The CEO is about running the entire organization and anticipating the future and setting a direction and a course. The COO is about making the organization operate. And there's also looking into the future as well and anticipating. The two positions are really, from a skill standpoint, they're almost interchangeable. The difference is the COO is looking primarily internal, not completely, because you get myopic if you just look and focused internal. The CEO is looking external. Again, not completely, because they need to know what's going on in the organization as well. So the difference is the vision versus the execution.
Okay. I wanted to ask you because you played both in your life. You've been able to play CEO, COO, you've been able to wear many different hats. You've been the outside consultant, you've been inside corporations. Just wondering if that was a big shift for you, or like you said, it's pretty interchangeable. So now I know.
Well, it was actually a surprise when I became a CEO. Yeah. I had always figured the number 2 spot is just the right place for me. So there was an opportunity, there was a need, there was a void, And so I stepped into the role as CEO of National Captioning. And it was quite a challenge. And it was also very rewarding. So the concept that I had, which I stepped out of the comfort zone, saying, okay, I just want to do this. And what I got for that was I got a board that was very demanding, but I could handle that because way back in the day I had 5 minutes with Paul. The challenges were immense, but if you break them down, it's doing one thing and then another thing and then another thing and doing it consistently and seeing how it works and making changes.
What are some of the major challenges that a leader faces at that C-level position? You know, whether they're CEO, whatever that is, COO, CEO, CTO, what are some of the greatest challenges, because you've been up there, that you face in a rapidly growing organization?
This may surprise you, but I think one of them is communication. And it's very, very easy to be burdened and just almost squashed by just the volume and the weight of everything that you're responsible for. And when you do that, not you necessarily, but when people do that, they tend to go inside. And when you go inside, you're not communicating. The hardest thing is to, when the burden is there, is to share it, is to get others involved. It's not all about me. I've got limits on how much energy, how much stamina, how much creativity. I'm only one person. I've got other people in the organization all the way down to the doers and the folks that are just opening the door. And they've all got gifts, they've all got contributions they could make and are willing to make. They just need to be asked. It really comes down to communication and being honest with yourself.
Now, what's your stand on investing in leaders for things like communication and personal development? Is there enough of that?
That has two sides. It's like the sword. There's two blades on it. From an organizational standpoint, investing in any kind of individual personal training is, when there's extra money, they do it. When there's not extra money, they don't do it. In small organizations, there's never extra money. But there's opportunities to do it. The other side of it is what the individual is willing to do. So I can say, or let's do it the other way. You can say, well, Jack, now that you've joined Mali Creative, I want to develop you more in these different areas. And I can say, okay, sure. And then I don't do anything more. So you've done what you've helped to create a development plan. I'm not doing anything. So you can't push a noodle or a rope or something like that.
Right. Well, I would love to go into concepts around business economy and trends and things that you're seeing that you think will impact the business community. I know that you're a constant learner. You read a lot, you ask lots of questions, constantly curious, and especially with your network of community leaders that are collaborating with you and sharing all the time, there must be tons of information coming at you. How do you take that analysis and then be able to bring that to your clients? To share with them the trends and what's changing, how to prepare, because everything is moving so fast.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
There's something going on now that I call the final frontier, and it's very interesting. It's not scary, but it is very disruptive, and it creates a lot of issues, but a whole lot of opportunities. The final frontier is the baby boomers. The boomers have done very well in starting businesses. They've grown businesses. They've maintained businesses. And now it's my generation. They're at the point of, well, it's time to go retire. For the entrepreneur, for the business owner, their retirement is that organization. That's where the investment is. That's where the money is for retirement. They know about starting, they know about growing, they know about maintaining, they know about customer service, they know about the industry, they know about all those aspects. They don't know how to exit it. And if you think of a wagon wheel, if you think of the wagon wheel and it's got a hub in the center, as long as that hub is there, that wagon wheel has got a great deal of strength and structure. If you take that hub away, not so much. That's the owner. So the final frontier is the next thing that owner is going to be doing, which is exiting the business. Statistically, probably about over half of the small and medium businesses in the American economy are owned by boomers. 15 years, when we're already into the count. All of those are going to turn over. Some will be sought, and it'll be easy. They'll come away with a whole pocket full of cash, done a good job, go off and fish or go to Florida or whatever they do. Others, you'll have to have a lot of work in order to sell, but it's possible that the business is still viable. It's doing something that continues to be valued in the marketplace. And probably 50% of them will probably just evaporate. The doors will close. The kids don't want it. There's not a buyer. So where's the disruption? The disruption is that 50% of the economy over 15 years, that is a huge and unprecedented change. The opportunity is, if I want to buy a business, there's plenty out there to buy. If I don't want to buy a business, there's a different type of opportunity in providing services to organizations, to those owners, in helping them frame what it is that they're trying to do when they're exiting a business, and how to set themselves up for that. So there's groups that do that. There's organizations that do that. It's exit planning, I think, is the primary term for it. But there's another opportunity, and that is, as we're coming up and we've got the experience as professionals, that hub is really a generalist. They know about the business, they know about the industry, they know about the customers, they know about marketing, they know about production. That's an opportunity for somebody to come in and be a key player in the organization, so that in a short period of time, a couple of years, that the owner can then walk away from the organization, and there's a sustainability because that hub is there, it's replaced with another individual. That's where the hidden opportunity is. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that have the ability to do that, but I'm not sure that they see that is an opportunity.
Because that was my next question for you, is how do these owners in the baby boomer market, how do they prepare? Let's say they're watching the show now. I mean, what are some ideas to help them not be the 50% that's just going to evaporate and go away?
They need to tell themselves the truth. That they're good at all this other stuff, and if they don't know how to create a sale, then they need to find somebody that can help them. Most of them are seat of the pants. They learn by doing, and they've learned all the other things, but there's not a whole lot of opportunity to practice selling your business. So find somebody that can take an objective look. I've got a number of clients that are in this situation, and one comes to mind. He's a product company, and he's decided, well, I'm tired of doing this. I'm thinking maybe it's time to move, and all of the retirement thoughts. Right. I'm going to go fishing every day for however many days, and then you either get sick of fish or you change whatever you're doing.
Your next hobby.
Yeah. So he said, I just want to get out of this. And I've approached a couple of people and said, I'm interested in selling. Why don't you make me an offer? And didn't get anything back. So I'm thinking I'll just sell the inventory. And the accountant tells me it's worth X number of dollars. And he says, what do you think, Jack? And I said, if you get a third of what the accountant said, is the value of that, you're going to be doing extremely well. When you sell it retail one at a time, you'll probably get that over time. You sell it all together, it's a fire sale. And you're leaving a whole lot of value on the table. He says, what do you mean? The inventory and the assets, that's it, isn't it? I said, no. You've got a company that's recognized internationally. It's a niche market, but it's got a huge recognition worldwide. You've got the knowledge of the industry, you've got the knowledge of the customers, and you've got the knowledge of what they want and how to sell. That's a value. You're also a thought leader. You're not thinking about just what I got in the back room. You're thinking about what's the next generation of these things. So, and that thought leadership is not just limited to you talking to yourself. You're talking to other people in the industry. So you and the knowledge that you have is a huge value. The goodwill, the name, package all that together. If you're willing to spend another year or two under contract with the new buyer, you can train them and you can help them develop and assimilate the company. And you've got the inventory is a minor amount of what you could sell the company for. And he says, I'd never thought of that.
Sometimes we don't always see our own value.
Sometimes it's hard to see the forest because all these trees that are in the way.
Yeah. So what is the actual mission of Sales Lab?
Well, it changes.
Okay.
By title, Sales Lab would lead you to think that it's all about sales. And it is all about sales. It's all about operations. It's all about development of executives. We can do things like parachute into a country club and run the club and develop staff there. We can take a whole product line and introduce it and begin to get the sales for that product line. What I've found is that when you increase sales, which is always a great thing to do, when you increase sales, the operations and the systems can't support the new level of demand. So there's a lot of work to be done on bringing things up to speed to be able to support the new level. So it's, I'd say holistic, but I'm not sure really what that means. But it's a little bit of everything. But primarily it's improvement.
What inspired you to come on board?
Dick Davies, who's the president of Sales Lab, and I have been friends for, I don't know, eons. And one day I was just talking to him and said, you know, you're missing half of the boat here. I'm an operations guy, and I do sales as well. And you're a sales guy, and you've done operations. But it's not all about sales. It's all about improvement. It's all about both sides. So we decided we'd give it a try for a while, and that was, I don't know, eons ago.
So what does it take to build, to have a vision for, and then to actually build a multi-million-dollar business?
Well, you have to have that better mousetrap, or at least a vision of the better mousetrap. Not on a multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar basis, but the Leadership Breakfast in Maryland is a good example, I think. I've been to similar groups. I modeled this after a couple of groups. I actually talked with one of your colleagues, Steve Dorfman, as I was thinking about this. And what I mean by thinking about it is a forum for experienced leaders to be able to share experiences, share issues, and share knowledge. And in talking to a number of other folks, saying, if there was something like this, would you be interested? Would that be something of value to you? And I was getting back a lot of this. Yes. So that's the way that the vision started. It was an idea. I was playing with it, and that's the way I labeled it. It was playing with it. And the more that I talked to people, the more I realized that this was something that was of value to others. So building a $10 organization, building $1 million organization, building $1 billion organization, it's really all about finding something that is a need and that offers value, and then developing it and marketing it. So the definition of value, which is one that I particularly like, is it costs me very little or nothing, but you can't buy it at any price.
How do you market value?
In the old days, you used information. You had a piece of paper, and you went, and in that sit-down meeting, you left the person with that piece of paper. That's the way you did it. And they didn't have access to that information other than that piece of paper. Today, that's been changed. That's been turned on its ear. With the internet, everybody can get that piece of paper and then more. The marketing of value is to give away something that is of value to the individual. And that could be something that is extremely costly. Probably don't want to do that too often. But it's something that the other person would want, need, or would benefit from. Having solved a problem by giving that away, the person is then, it clears part of the vision, and they realize, I've got other issues. I've got other things that could benefit. I really like this guy because he gave me something that solved my problem, and all he wanted to do was just talk.
Trust.
Trust is a big thing.
Trust and relationships, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Those are the key elements, and integrity. One of the things that I find in the world of networking and business ownership and working with clients and continuing to have clients that come through the door that get referred to you is the integrity of following up and following through. Because we make a lot of promises in the marketing world. That's what we do. We make these commitments that we can do it. This is the part of the marketing spiel, but very few consistently follow up and follow through to the very end to continue the loyalty piece, to continue to bring those clients back and years to come. So do you have anything to say about that? Like, what's your take on it, your experiences?
In a former lifetime, my profession was human resources. One of the things that takes very little effort and makes a huge impact is to send a note after an interview. Send a note, and with email and all that, there's a tendency to do it that way. My recommendation is that it's handwritten in an envelope with a stamp, and that it references something that you learned, something that was important, something that you valued as a takeaway from that meeting, which happened to be an interview. I think doing it in a handwritten form in an envelope through the mail, it makes it unique because nobody does that anymore. But the sad thing is, it takes 5 minutes to do this. Thank you, and I whatever else you want to say. But it makes so much of a difference. The same thing is true when you just toss off, and I'll give you a call in 2 days. That sounds very specific. 2 days come, 2 days go. If you don't do it, what's the message that you're leaving with somebody?
Right, exactly.
Am I going to trust this person to follow through with a multi-million-dollar contract if they won't even give me a call 2 days? They called in 3 days, but they committed in 2. So do what you say, and then say what you're going to do, and then do what you say.
That's a great final tidbit there. I appreciate that. You've got some great advice. I was taking notes. Hope I can remember all of them. How can people find you, Jack, learn more about you?
You can reach me at jacklgates@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
We can talk for hours. There's so much inside that brain of yours. So we'll do a post show and keep talking.
It was delightful, and the tea is just absolutely superb.
Thank you for being here, Jack. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining me and Jack on Tea with Molly, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.